The vast expanse of the Orion Nebula glittered like a crown of stars, a testament to the grandeur of the Zylen Empire. For centuries, the Zylen, a race of crystalline beings with intellects as sharp as their shimmering exoskeletons, had expanded their dominion unchallenged. Their technology was unrivaled, their fleets immense, and their conquests swift and absolute. General Catalyst stood at the helm of Luminary Ascendant, the Empire's flagship, its sleek surface refracting the light of a dying star. Her 6 multifaceted eyes scanned the holographic projection before her, displaying the planetary system of Sol. This tiny star system housed a species the Zylen had largely ignored. Humans. "They call it Earth," Catalyst remarked, her voice reverberating like the hum of a finely tuned crystal. A backwater planet of carbon-based bipeds, no warp technology, no interstellar colonies, and yet they had the audacity to intercept our transmission frequencies. Beside her, Advisor Lethrin gave an amused trill. "Primitive curiosity, nothing more. Their kind has barely scratched the surface of their moon. They are fragile and emotional, irrational. The fact they even managed to decode our signal is surprising." Alice turned away from the projection, her crystalline armor catching the dim light in a cascade of rainbows. Surprised or not, they must learn the cost of intruding on Zylen affairs. "Prepare the Convergence Array. We will end this quickly. Their defiance will serve as a cautionary tale to other primitives." The command was met with brisk efficiency. Zylen drones, silent and efficient, moved to carry out her orders. The holographic display shifted to reveal Earth, a green and blue marble spinning in the void. Tiny compared to the Zylen's massive fleets, it seemed insignificant, a mere stepping stone in the grand march of their empire. As Cathalis watched, a human broadcast flickered onto her personal console, a message from Earth. A human face appeared, weathered, determined, and unlike anything she had expected. "This is Commander Elias Carter of Earth's Defense Coalition," the human said, his voice steady despite the obvious peril. "We know why you're here, and we know what you're capable of. But if you think humanity will simply roll over, you're mistaken. Though we lack your technology, we have something you'll never understand: the will to fight." Cathalis tilted her head, the edges of her new form vibrating subtly, a Zylen expression of curiosity mixed with amusement. "Fascinating," she muttered. "Such bravado from a species so clearly outmatched. Let us see how long that will last." The order to fire was given, but deep within Cathalis, a strange sensation lingered, a flicker of unease. She dismissed it, confident that this minor conflict would be over before her crystalline heart completed its next cycle. Little did she know, the humans would not only survive, but reshape the course of the galaxy in ways she could never anticipate. Commander Elias Carter stood on the bridge of the Unity's Resolve, a battered but steadfast vessel orbiting Earth. The flagship of humanity's hastily assembled defense coalition was a patchwork of salvaged technology, each component a testament to human ingenuity under impossible circumstances. "Status report," Carter demanded, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. The bridge was alive with activity, officers rushing between consoles, alarms blaring, and the steady hum of the ship's engines beneath it all. "Zylen fleet approaching Earth's orbit in formation," reported Lieutenant Sarah Mendoza, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. 3 Dreadnought-class vessels, 5 escorts, and hundreds of drones. Their weapons are beyond anything we've faced. Carter clenched his jaw. "And our defenses?" "Our defenses are insufficient," Mendoza conceded, her voice tightening. "The orbital platforms are at full capacity, but their targeting systems can't keep up with Zylen ships. Our planetary shields will hold for a while, but once those drones swarm..." The unspoken end of her sentence hung heavily in the air. Carter's gaze swept across the bridge, taking in the fear on every face. He was no stranger to dire odds. As a young officer, he had led missions against insurmountable threats before. But this was different. The Zylen weren't just superior, they were incomprehensible. Their technology, their strategy, and their very nature were beyond human comprehension. Yeah. Carter knew surrender was not an option. The stakes were clear. This wasn't just a battle for Earth, it was a battle for humanity's survival. If they failed, the Zylen would crush their planet and move on, erasing every trace of human existence from the stars. "Catch me through to all coalition forces," Carter ordered. A moment later, his face appeared on every screen, in every cockpit, and at every station across the fleet. "This is Commander Carter. We stand on the brink of annihilation. The Zylen believe us to be insignificant, unworthy of the stars. They think their power makes them unstoppable. But let me tell you something they don't understand." He leaned forward, his voice gaining strength. "We are human. We've survived plagues, wars, and disasters that should have destroyed us. We've faced the abyss time and time again, and found a way to climb out. Our strength isn't in our weapons or our technology, it's in our ability to stand together when it matters most. They may have ships, but we have heart. And today, we fight not because we'll win, but because we won't quit." Across the fleet, his words resonated. Pilots gripped their controls tighter, technicians worked faster, and soldiers prepared for the fight of their lives. Back on the bridge, Carter turned to Mendoza. "Coordinate with Earth's defense grid. We'll focus fire on their drones and create an opening. If we can disrupt their formation, even for a moment, we might stand a chance." Mendoza hesitated. "Sir, the odds—" "I know the odds," Carter interrupted, "but we're not giving them the satisfaction of an easy victory." Meanwhile, deep beneath the surface of Earth, in a hidden bunker, a young scientist named Dr. Leila Park worked furiously at her console. A prodigy in her field, she had spent years researching ways to neutralize alien technology. Her lab was filled with prototypes, none of them fully tested. Her assistant, Amir, hovered nervously behind her. "Leila, we don't have time to run diagnostics. If this backfires—" "It won't," Leila said, her voice firm. "The Zylen's energy systems are crystalline. If we can destabilize their resonance frequencies, we can disrupt their entire fleet. And if we can't?" Amir pressed. Leila paused, her fingers stilling over the keyboard. "Then we lose. But if there's even a chance, we have to try." As the Zylen fleet loomed closer, Earth's defenders braced themselves. The humans' ships were a mismatched fleet of outdated cruisers, repurposed freighters, and experimental craft held together by determination and duct tape. Compared to the sleek, shimmering vessels of the Zylen, they looked laughable. On board the luminary Ascendant, Cathalis observed the human forces with detached amusement. "Primitive chaos," she remarked. "Their ships barely qualify as vessels. This will be over within the hour." But as the humans moved into position, a strange energy began to ripple through their ranks. It wasn't technology or strategy, it was something deeper. Despite the overwhelming odds, they stood defiant, their will unbroken. And as Carter prepared to give the order to engage, a thought crossed his mind. A thought that would prove pivotal in the battle to come. Though they underestimated us, they have no idea what humanity is capable of. The first wave of Zylen drones descended on Earth like a silvery swarm of wasps. Their formation was flawless, their precision unmatched. Each drone moved with the singular purpose of neutralizing the human defenses, and from the bridge of the luminary ascendant, General Catalyst observed their progress with satisfaction. "They've taken the bait," Catalyst declared. The humans' fleet, she noted, had foolishly advanced, leaving Earth's planetary shields vulnerable. "Prepare the Convergence Array. Once their orbital defenses are overwhelmed, the planet will fall." On board the Unity's Resolve, Commander Carter watched the incoming swarm on the tactical display. His officers scrambled to respond, coordinating with Earth's orbital platforms and defense fighters, but the gap in technology was glaringly obvious. The Zylen drones moved faster than anything humanity had faced before. "Redirect fire to sectors 14 and 22, Carter ordered. "Force them to spread out." "They're too fast, sir," Lieutenant Mendoza protested. "We can't track them effectively." "Then we make them predictable," Carter said, a determined glint in his eyes. "Activate the decoy array." A series of small, unassuming satellites activated, releasing bursts of electromagnetic interference. The drones hesitated for a fraction of a second, barely perceptible, but enough for Earth's orbital platforms to lock on and fire. The coordinated barrage of missiles struck several drones, shattering their crystalline forms into brilliant shards. On the luminary ascendant, Catalys's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "Clever," she muttered. "They're more resourceful than I anticipated. No matter, deploy the Annihilators." The Annihilators were massive beetle-like war machines designed to overwhelm ground forces. They descended to Earth's surface, landing with earth-shaking impacts that sent tremors through cities. Each Annihilator was equipped with a resonance cannon capable of leveling buildings in a single blast. In one of the targeted cities, Dr. Leila Park watched from a reinforced bunker as one of the Annihilators tore through a defensive barricade. Its crystalline legs glowed with an otherworldly light as it advanced, seemingly unstoppable. "We're out of options," Amir shouted, panic evident in his voice. "No, we're not," Leila said firmly. She held up a small device, its surface etched with intricate circuitry. "This is our chance." "Getting close enough can destabilize one's crystalline core. That's suicide," Amir argued. Leila met his gaze. "Do you have a better idea?" With a reluctant nod, Amir joined her as they climbed into a modified ground vehicle. The streets were chaotic, civilians fleeing, soldiers firing futilely at the Annihilators. Leila's heart pounded, but her hands were steady as she maneuvered the vehicle closer to the massive machine. Meanwhile, in orbit, the human fleet continued its desperate struggle. Carter watched as the Zylen's main warships began charging their Convergence Array. A beam of shimmering light lanced through space, obliterating one of Earth's orbital platforms. "We're losing ships too quickly," Mendoza said, her voice tight. Carter nodded grimly. "Then it's time to even the odds. Patch me through to the fleet." Once the connection was live, Carter spoke with unwavering conviction. "We've held the line before and we'll hold it again. Every second we buy gives Earth's people a chance to fight back. Remember why we're here. For our families, for our future. No retreat, no surrender." The response was immediate. Across the fleet, human pilots pushed their battered ships to the limit, engaging the Zylen drones with reckless bravery. They exploited every opportunity, using debris as cover, coordinating their fire, and even ramming their ships into the drones when necessary. The Zylen, for all their technological superiority, were unprepared for such raw, unrelenting resistance. On the ground, Leila and Amir reached the base of the Annihilator. The towering machine loomed over them, its resonance cannon charging for another devastating blast. Leila activated the destabilizer, its faint hum barely audible over the chaos. "Keep it steady," she told Amir as she climbed onto the vehicle's roof, holding the device above her head. She aimed it at the Annihilator's glowing core and activated it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, With a deafening crack, the Annihilator's core began to vibrate uncontrollably. The resonance cannon sputtered and the machine collapsed in a cascade of crystalline fragments. Amir stared in disbelief. It worked. It actually worked. Leila allowed herself a brief smile before turning her attention to the next Annihilator. One down. Let's move. In orbit, Cathalis watched the humans' counterattacks with growing unease. Her advisors, once so confident, now hesitated. "General," Lotheran said cautiously, "the humans are adapting faster than anticipated. Their tactics are not unconventional." Cathalis's voice hardened. "Adaptation is irrelevant. We are the Zylen. Deploy the harmonic suppressors. Let us see how they fare without their precious communication systems." The harmonic suppressors emitted waves of interference, disrupting human communication networks. Pilots found themselves cut off from their commanders, and ground forces struggled to coordinate. But humanity's response was once again unexpected. On board the Unity's Resolve, Carter's crew quickly reverted to prearranged contingency plans. Officers used signal flares and physical messengers to relay orders, adapting with the same ingenuity that had driven humanity's survival for centuries. On the ground, Leila's team continued their work. Civilians, inspired by their efforts, joined the fight, constructing barricades, evacuating the wounded, and even arming themselves with whatever they could find. As the battle raged on, the tide began to turn. The Zylen drones, though superior individually, were being overwhelmed by the sheer determination and creativity of the human defenders. For the first time, Cathalis felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. "And these humans," she murmured, watching as their seemingly chaotic actions began to coalesce into a coordinated effort. "They are not as primitive as we believed. From the surface of Earth to the cold expanse of space, humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and empathy began to shine. And as the Zylen fleet faltered, the seeds of a greater realization were planted in Cathalis' crystalline heart. The Unity's resolve shook as another barrage of Zylen fire rained down. The human fleet, battered and diminished, fought on with desperate resolve, but it was clear time was running out. The Zylen's flagship, Luminary Ascendant, hovered in low orbit, poised to deliver the final blow to Earth. From the bridge of the Unity's resolve, Commander Elias Carter observed the worsening situation with a sense of cold inevitability. His ship was barely holding together and most of the fighter squadrons had been wiped out. "We need a miracle," Mendoza said, her voice strained as she gripped the console. "Their Convergence Array is charging again. We won't survive another hit." Carter turned to face her, his expression hard. "Then it's time we give them a miracle of our own." Before Mendoza could respond, the comm system crackled to life. It was Leila Park, her voice urgent but composed. "Commander, we've managed to reverse engineer part of their resonance destabilizer tech. We have a window of opportunity to strike at the heart of their fleet, but we need time. We need a distraction." Carter's gaze hardened as he looked out at the Zylen ships in orbit. "We don't have much time, Leila, but if you think it'll work, we'll give you that window." He turned to his officers, the weight of the decision hanging over them. "This is it. We give everything we have to make sure Leila gets through." On the Luminary Ascendant, Cathalis stood in silence, watching as the human fleet continued to fight. She had assumed they would crumble long ago, yet they persisted, resilient, unpredictable, and stubborn. It was both frustrating and fascinating. Her crystalline form shimmered as her advisors moved around her, strategizing their next move. "General," one of her officers said, "their fleet is weaker than ours. We will destroy them in the next wave." It is only a matter of time." Catalyst looked out of the viewport, her gaze lingering on the human ships below. "I agree," she said, her voice cool, "but this is something different. Whoa, these humans have no reason to fight so fiercely unless they understand something we do not." Her mind raced as she considered the implications. Were they not as primitive as they had appeared? Had they uncovered something in the Zylen technology that she hadn't foreseen? It was a thought that gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the strategy at hand. "The Convergence Array was ready. We destroy them now," Catalyst said, her voice unwavering. "Prepare to fire." Back on Earth's surface, in the middle of the chaotic battlefield, Leila Park and her team, armed with the last remnants of humanity's most advanced technology, raced toward the target zone, a hidden area beneath the luminary ascendant, where they could deploy the destabilizer. There were no guarantees, no fail-safes. The mission could fail, and with it, the hope of humanity's survival. As they approached the designated location, Leila's heart pounded. Her team worked quickly to activate the system while their surroundings were filled with explosions and gunfire. She looked up at the massive alien ship looming overhead, knowing that every second counted. "Leila," Amir said, his voice strained, "we've got incoming. Annihilators are heading right for us." Leila's eyes darted to the approaching machines, their massive forms casting long shadows over the crumbling cityscape. There was no time to retreat. They had to finish this. "Keep working. I'll hold them off." Amir hesitated, but Leila's determined gaze steeled him. "Go," she shouted. He nodded and turned back to the task at hand, setting the destabilizer in place. Leila took a deep breath and, in a sudden, reckless moment of defiance, sprinted toward the approaching Annihilators. She grabbed a discarded weapon, an old prototype laser rifle, and opened fire, aiming at the machine's legs and weak points. The shots were ineffective, but it bought her team a precious few moments. Then, just as the first Annihilator drew near, something unexpected happened. The creature paused, its glowing eyes dimming. It turned slowly, its resonance cannon powering down. Leila blinked in confusion. Had the weapon malfunctioned? From the distance, a series of sudden flashes lit up the sky. Carter's voice came over the comms, a burst of excitement laced with disbelief. "Leila, we've got a signal. Their resonance field is destabilizing. Your distraction worked. We've hit them at their core." Leila's heart skipped. The resonance destabilizer had worked. Not just on a single machine, but on the entire fleet. Zylen's perfect system of dominance had cracked. Back on the luminary ascendant, Cathalus's eyes widened in shock as the resonant frequencies that had governed her fleet began to falter. A violent ripple spread through the ships, warping their coordinated precision. The Convergence Array faltered, its beams sputtering as its power sources fluctuated wildly. "What's happening?" Cathalus demanded, her voice tight with disbelief. "Impossible," Letherman muttered, scanning his console. "Their weapon, it's interfering with our fleet's resonance frequency. We can't fire." Cathalus's mind raced as the tide shifted rapidly against them. This wasn't a fight, it was an unraveling. The Zylen, so confident in their superiority, had underestimated one thing: humanity's ability to adapt, to act when faced with the unthinkable. The humans had found the flaw in their technology and exploited it with a precision Catalyst could not have anticipated. In that moment, Carter saw it. The Zylen fleet was disorganized, their ships now drifting apart like pieces of a shattered puzzle. The humans had won, not by superior firepower, but through cunning and perseverance. "We're not finished yet," Carter shouted as the fleet rallied. "Let's finish this." With the resonance field destabilized, the human fleet launched a final, coordinated assault. The first wave of missiles struck the Zylen's weakened ships, tearing through their hulls and causing explosions that rippled through their formations. The Unity's resolve itself fired its final, devastating volley at the luminary ascendant, tearing through the flagship's protective shields. Aboard the luminary ascendant, Kitalis's heart sank as she watched her flagship crumple under the barrage. The human fleet, battered and worn, had done what seemed impossible. They had defeated the Zylen. I misjudged them, Kithalis whispered to herself. I misjudged them. They are not like the others, she said. As the last remnants of her fleet disintegrated around her, she faced the undeniable truth. The Zylen Empire had underestimated humanity, not just in strength, but in spirit. The humans had won, not through their technology, but through their unyielding will, their unity, and their ability to rise when all seemed lost. Commander Carter stood aboard the Unity's resolve, watching as Earth's defenders cheered, their victory earned not through the might of superior forces, but through the strength of the human spirit. As the remnants of the Zylen fleet began to retreat, Carter's words echoed in his mind, a final affirmation of what had brought them here. The silence aboard the luminary ascendant was suffocating. Kithalis stood alone in the command chamber, the viewports offering only the black emptiness of space. The battle was over, and the once proud fleet of the Zylen lay in ruin. Her advisors, her officers, were either dead or scattered. The Empire, which had seen itself as invincible, now stared into the abyss of defeat. The humans, unexpected, disorganized, and seemingly powerless, had done the unthinkable. They had not only withstood the Zylen assault, but had turned the tide against them. Her thoughts swirled, the weight of the loss pressing down on her like the crushing gravity of a dying star. How did it happen? How did these fragile, volatile creatures exploit the system that made the Zylen the galaxy's most feared force? Kithalis had underestimated humanity, believing their technology primitive, their strategies chaotic, and their will weak. But they were anything but. There was no straightforward explanation for what she was feeling. A mixture of disbelief, respect, and something even darker, fear. For the first time in her long life, Kithalis felt the bitter taste of regret. She stood by the shattered control panel, watching the images of the humans' victory. While celebrating, they began rebuilding their cities and the galaxy. There was no celebration in her heart, only the heavy realization that the Zylen Empire had just lost something far more significant than a war. They had lost their sense of supremacy, their unquestioned dominance. Her mind drifted to Commander Carter, the human who had led the charge against her fleet. She had watched him from afar, seen his determination in the face of impossible odds. It had been his leadership, his refusal to yield, that had sparked the change. When Kithalis had thought of humanity, she had seen them as nothing more than fleeting, insignificant creatures, easily crushed beneath the weight of the Zylen might. But now she saw them differently. A depth of spirit that Zylen couldn't fathom made them dangerous. "General," a voice called from the door, snapping Kithalis from her reverie. Lytherin, the lead strategist, entered the room, his expression grim. "The remnants of our fleet are scattered across the quadrant. We have no choice but to retreat, General. We cannot continue this war." Kithalis gave a slow nod, her voice hollow. "I know. Zylen will not recover from this, not in our lifetime." Lytherin stood in silence for a long moment, then finally spoke. "What will we do now?" Her eyes narrowed, her mind running through the possibilities. The Zylen Empire could not simply disappear. The galaxy would soon realize that the once unshakable Zylen presence was no more. The fallout would be vast. New power vacuums would emerge, and new alliances would form. But more than that, the humans had made their mark. The galaxy would remember their name. "We rebuild," she said finally, her voice steady with determination, though her gaze remained distant. "We will retreat, regroup, and rethink our place in this galaxy. But we must also acknowledge something we cannot ignore. The humans, they are not like the other species we have conquered." On Earth, as the celebrations turned to reconstruction, the impact of humanity's victory began to ripple outward across the stars. The fight for survival against the Zylen Empire had not just saved the planet, it had altered the course of galactic history. Commander Carter, now hailed as a hero, stood before a gathering of world leaders in the newly restored United Nations Council. The war had taken its toll, hundreds of millions had died, and countless more were left to pick up the pieces. But the war had also forged something far stronger: unity. The global resistance against the Zylen had transcended national borders, and Earth had emerged from the ashes as a unified front, ready to take its place in the galactic community. "Our victory was not just against the Zylen," Carter said in his speech, his voice firm, but filled with quiet reverence. "It was a victory for humanity itself. We proved that no matter the odds, no matter the technology, we will always find a way to rise. We will always find a way to fight for each other." As Carter spoke, the camera panned across the faces of Earth's leaders, many of whom had once been at odds with one another. There was no more division now, only a single collective goal: the survival and advancement of humanity. The loss of life had been devastating, but the unity that had emerged was undeniable. And with that unity came new opportunities. The victory over the Zylen had not only earned humanity a place in the galactic community, it had also made them a symbol of resilience, a beacon of hope for countless other species. In the aftermath of the battle, ambassadors from previously neutral or distant civilizations began to approach Earth with offers of trade, alliances, and mutual defense. What had been a war of survival had transformed into a new era of cooperation. The Zylen's previous control over galactic trade routes was no longer a guarantee, and many alien species, once subjugated by the Zylen, were now looking toward humanity as a potential ally. Meanwhile, the humans were not blind to the gravity of the situation. Their victory had earned them both respect and suspicion. They had beaten the Zylen, but that only made them a potential threat to others. Some alien species, still fearful of humanity's sudden rise, watched from the shadows, unsure whether they were witnessing the birth of a new empire or a fleeting moment of triumph. As for Cathalis, her reflection on the Zylen defeat had been profound. She had underestimated humanity's strength, and now she would never forget it. She knew the Zylen Empire had lost its place at the top of the galactic hierarchy, but the real question that lingered in her mind was this: what role would humanity play in the future? Would they become the galaxy's greatest protector, or its most dangerous aggressor? But for now, humanity had emerged not only victorious, but transformed. They had gone from being the underdogs to being a force that could no longer be ignored. The galaxy had changed, and so had humanity. They were no longer just survivors. They were players on the galactic stage, and they were ready for whatever came next.